With Skyrim, like other games I've covered, certain mysteries have become like campfire tales, spreading through forum threads, videos, and one-to-one conversations, creating a sort of shared oral history. There are the stories everyone seems to know, the mannequins that creepily move around as though alive, the rare and elusive Headless Horseman whose spectral rides sparked endless speculation before being confirmed as real, and the enigmatic Eye of Magnus tied to some of the game's deepest and most cryptic lore. Then there's the unsettling history of Rorikstead, whispered to be steeped in Daedric influence and sacrificial rituals, and the infamous Bugs in Jars, a collection of preserved insects and runes that tantalised players with the possibility of a hidden puzzle before being discovered to be cut content. These legends have been analysed, dissected, and theorised about endlessly, becoming Skyrim's version of well-worn campfire tale favourites. But for every tale that has entered the annals of Skyrim's folklore, countless others remain in the shadows. Lesser-known stories, strange glitches, and uncanny player experiences that haven't been dissected repeatedly or explained away. These are the personal accounts that belong to late-night internet rabbit hole sessions where you find yourself piqued by the curiosity to know, could they be real? Did these things really happen? There are also tales that fit into the 50-50 space. Some people know, some people seem surprised to find out. So I'll be throwing a few of those in too. A quick word on cut content. There's so much of that for Skyrim that I may do a separate video, but it's been pretty well covered by other content creators already. Anyway, as I've gone about online curating Skyrim's urban legends and oral histories, the seemingly forgotten and lesser known tales are the ones that linger with me the most. They are the digital campfire stories of Tamriel. So let's step away from the legends everyone knows about and gather round the fire to tell tales of these strange, obscure corners of Skyrim's folklore. Let's start off with something fairly innocent before getting into the spookier stuff. Our first myth has been talked about by Skyrim players for years. Follow a fox and it will lead you to treasure. It sounds like an adventurer's tall tale, and for a long time, that's how players reacted to it online. But this one turned out to be true, albeit not for the reasons you might expect. So how does it work? Here's the secret. Skyrim uses something called a navmesh system to guide NPCs through the world. It's an invisible web of polygons that covers the landscape, helping the game decide where characters can or can't walk. In open wilderness, this web can be simple with larger polygons, but in places like caves, ruins, or bandit camps, the polygons get smaller and denser to accommodate more intricate details. Now, foxes in Skyrim are programmed with a straightforward instinct. When scared, they run to safety. But here's the catch. They don't measure safety by distance in meters. Instead, they aim to flee a specific number of polygons away. Because dense navmesh areas are usually treasure-laden locations, foxes often dash towards these loot-filled ruins or hidden caves purely by accident. For players, it feels as though these skittish little creatures are guiding them to riches like furry treasure hunters. But really, the fox is just trying to escape whatever startled it, be it a sword-swinging dragonborn or a distant dragon roar. Over the years, players have tested the myth, sharing stories of foxes leading them to bandit gold or forgotten ruins. Despite the rather mundane explanation behind this phenomenon, this unintentional behaviour creates a pretty enchanting bit of emergent gameplay. Unlike goats or deer, which might wander aimlessly or stand their ground, foxes are unique in their purposeful, polygon-driven retreats. For our next myth, we're going to look at a question posed by a player in early 2024. These are the sorts of things that I love to come across. One-off posts that have never come before and, more than likely, won't ever crop up again. You don't get more obscure than the so-called ghost of the fleeing draugr, a shadowy figure that one can only presume would dart away in terror from adventurers who stumble upon it. What I love about this one is the classic urban legend feel. The original poster says a friend told them about it, harking back to the days when kids in the playground would share creepy video game legends and stories with one another. The name of the legend is intriguing in and of itself, though players who replied to the forum post dismissed it as a product of faulty memory or a misunderstood encounter. Some players speculated that the tale might stem from sightings of the Headless Horseman or glitches involving his ghostly steed. However, unlike the spectral rider, the draugr's alleged behaviour, frantic flight, remains an anomaly. With no solid proof to back up the tale, it remains as a possible fragment of player imagination or a story made up by the original poster's friend to send them on a wild goose chase. And yet, other confirmed legends started with posts like these. Do you know anything about the ghost of the fleeing draugr? If you do, let me know. Since 2012, and possibly even earlier than that, rumours swirled all over forums regarding a rather strange phenomenon in Skyrim's Sovngarde, that the imposing statues featured in this mythic realm seemingly would move when the player wasn't looking. Over the years, players have shared tales of these movements, describing moments where they felt the statues were facing them no matter where they stood, or even catching a glimpse of them shifting when they turned away. These anecdotes were historically met with a mix of disbelief, intrigue, and outright dismissal. Some players, even today, remain completely unaware of this strange statue moving phenomenon. Others recall their first encounter with the statues as a moment of genuine unease, describing how they jumped in their seats upon realising the statues weren't as static as they seemed. The effect is reminiscent of the infamous weeping angels from Doctor Who, creating a similar feeling of being watched by something unnervingly alive. What makes this myth especially compelling is that it's been confirmed as true. Yes, the statues in Sovngarde really do rotate to face you, and there's no sleight of hand or overactive imagination involved. Their movements are subtle, almost imperceptible, but they're very real. Video footage from players has caught this strange behaviour in action. Think of this as we go through the stories in this video. Some legends or rumours do in fact turn out to be true in the end, and have evidence to back them up. Next up, we have a nice, spooky tale. This story comes from a Skyrim player with thousands of hours logged, someone who knows the province better than most of us know our own neighbourhoods. Their account stands out for its chilling details and the eerie atmosphere it conjures up. According to the player, they were exploring the borders of Falkreath Hold late one night. The skies were overcast, plunging the forest into an oppressive darkness. It was the kind of night where every sound seems sharper, every shadow heavier. They were walking through the wilderness when they began to hear it, a faint chittering sound. At first they thought it might be a skeleton somewhere in the distance, its unsettling creaks carried on the wind. But there was no reason for skeletons to be in that area. They paused to listen, trying to pinpoint where the sound was coming from. It seemed faint at first, but grew louder and closer. They turned, scanning the trees and the path ahead. No matter which direction they faced, the sound continued to elude them. Detect Dead revealed nothing. Aura Whisper, which should have exposed any lurking threat, also showed nothing. The chittering continued, unnervingly close now, as though a skeleton were just a few feet behind them, but no enemy appeared. The player tried to ignore it, but the sound persisted. For over 20 minutes of real-world time, the noise followed them, growing louder, always just out of sight. Even stranger, during that time, they didn't encounter a single creature or enemy. Not a fox, not a wolf, not even a random bandit. The wilderness seemed utterly devoid of life. As dawn broke, the sound stopped as abruptly as it had started. Whatever had been following them through the forests of Falkreath vanished with the morning light. They never discovered the source of the noise or saw what might have been responsible. To this day, the player says it was one of the most unnerving experiences they've ever had in Skyrim. So was it a rare glitch, a random audio artifact, or something stranger? Whatever the case, the player seemed both mystified and spooked by the encounter. And it's a great story too. As ever, I'm curious to know if you've experienced anything like this. Another rather persistent urban legend discussed by Skyrim players online over the years revolves around Jarl Balgruuf and the mysterious skeleton in the pool under the bridge outside Dragon's Reach. The theory suggests that Balgruuf may have killed his wife and disposed of her body in the waters beneath his palace. Some others have theorised that his wife drowned herself after discovering Balgruuf had an affair with another woman. These rather sordid ideas have circulated since Skyrim's release, sparking debate amongst players about its validity and lore connections. Supporters of the theory point to the lack of any mention of Balgruuf's spouse in the game, despite his role as a father to 3 children. Some speculate the children might be adopted. However, the skeleton's placement in such a prominent and easily visible location invites questions and speculation, as it doesn't appear to tie into any existing quest or backstory. Others have argued that this theory is more a reflection of player imagination than Bethesda's intent. They point out that Balgruuf is a respected and honourable leader with no hints of darker tendencies in his narrative. Skeptics also suggest that the skeleton is simply an environmental detail with no deeper meaning, simply meant to enhance the game's world's sense of mystery. Something to wonder about, to question. Mystery for mystery's sake. As of the release of this video, the tale of Jarl Balgruuf and the skeleton remains an unsolved Skyrim myth. Whether it's a sinister secret with an explanation yet to be found or a trace of cut content, it's certainly an intriguing situation that fires up the imagination. Next up, we're going to look at the Rifton Midnight Gathering. This is one of my favourites. This peculiar tale comes from a Skyrim player recounting a series of strange events that started with what should have been a routine animal extermination quest. The mission? Clear out a bear from Helga's bunkhouse in Rifton. Rather than dispatching the bear right away, the player decided to have some fun and let it loose in the city. Chaos quickly ensued. The bear mauled Bolly and his wife before the guards intervened and finally brought it down. Unfortunately for the player, their antics didn't go unnoticed. The guards turned on them, leading to a violent chain of events that claimed the lives of several NPCs. Amidst the carnage, something unusual caught the player's eye. Brand Shay, Rifton's imprisoned merchant, was strolling outside. This struck them as odd since Brand Shay was supposed to be locked up in the dungeons. Even stranger, this was happening in the dead of night. Curious, the player decided to follow him. Brand Shay walked through the dark, empty streets of Rifton and headed straight for the graveyard. There, an even more unusual sight awaited. Every citizen of Rifton was gathered in a semicircle, silently facing Svanna Farshield. She stood at the centre of the group, looking poised to deliver a sermon or proclamation. The scene seemed strangely organised, in stark contrast to the chaos that had unfolded moments earlier. The player watched, half expecting something to happen, a speech, a ritual, an explanation, but nothing came. The citizens simply stood there in silence. Were they witnessing an elaborate glitch born of the chaos they'd sown earlier, causing a confluence of unrelated NPC behaviours? The player couldn't shake the unsettling feeling of the moment. Svanna's enigmatic presence in the citizens' silent congregation lent the event an almost cult-like quality. Was this some kind of forgotten questline or a glitch with creepy undertones? As with many of Skyrim's strange campfire tales, the answer remains a mystery. That is, unless you have the answer. In the deep dark of December 2023, a Skyrim player took to Reddit to share a strange tale. To begin with, their journey through Skyrim began like any other, exploring Riverwood on a quiet day, until the ordinary became extraordinary, spiralling into an inexplicable cascade of bizarre events. It's the kind of story that's absolutely perfect for sharing around our digital campfire. It all started normally enough. The player was strolling through the wilderness when, out of nowhere, a pair of elk charged straight at them. Elk, of all creatures, passive, gentle, and usually more likely to flee than fight. Stranger still, there were no spriggans around to explain the aggression, no green glow of influence to suggest they'd been bewitched. The player barely had time to react before a thief, not an ally, not even someone the player had interacted with, intervened, dispatching the elk as though compelled by some unseen urgency. From that moment on, the weirdness only got weirder. Guards in Riverwood, usually the absolute embodiment of Nordic stoicism, appeared to be visibly on edge. Weapons drawn, they scanned the horizon as if bracing for an attack, their eyes locked on some unseen foe. The player searched the area but found nothing. No bandits, no wolves, not even a stray rabbit. Whatever had triggered the guard's anxiety wasn't visible to anyone but them. It wasn't long before the player's horse joined the strange procession, wandering off unprompted in the direction of Riverwood as though drawn by the same unseen force. Curious, the player followed, wondering if they'd be able to get to the bottom of the mystery. Yet even after reaching Riverwood, nothing was resolved. The guards remained tense, frozen in an endless cycle of heightened alert. Fast travelling to a distant location reset their behaviour, but the question remained. It was as if the invisible threat had left with the player, out of sight, but not out of mind. But Skyrim wasn't done with its cryptic performances just yet. Later in the old Heraldon Inn, the player stumbled upon a sight that felt like the punchline to the whole surreal joke. A saber cat, yes, a saber cat, was inside the inn, locked in an epic struggle with the ghost who haunts the place. Claws versus fists, the two battled furiously as the player looked on, dumbstruck by the madness. These events, strange enough on their own, gain an almost folkloric quality when strung together, especially when entered into the online oral history of Skyrim by being shared in an online post. Theories abounded in the comments section, of course. Some suggested it could be a case of Skyrim's infamous glitches combining in just the right way to create a perfect storm of oddities. Perhaps the elk's aggression was tied to a known bug, one where normally passive wildlife inexplicably becomes hostile. Maybe the guard's behaviour was triggered by a distant enemy stuck in the terrain, invisible to the player but still registered as a threat by the game's AI. And the saber cat? Well, let's call that a Skyrim special. Because what other game could you find an apex predator squaring off with a ghost in a tavern? Other respondents had a more whimsical take, likening the story to a digital ghost tale, a real-life creepypasta. Well, as real as a tale can be when it originates from a game. They pictured some unseen force weaving chaos into the player's adventure, leaving a trail of mysteries and bizarre coincidences in its wake. Still others wondered, could it be unfinished code lurking in the game's depths, accidentally springing to life? Or is it just a reminder that Skyrim's charm lies as much in its unpredictability and propensity to create madcap emergent gameplay as anything else? Some other players shared their own tales of inexplicably aggressive wildlife. Foxes, goats, even rabbits gone rogue. Others joked that the elk must have been having a bad day, or that the saber cat and ghost were settling an old debt. And of course, someone dubbed the tale Skyrim's glitchiest creepypasta. In the end, whether these events were a cascade of bugs or something more enigmatic, they've earned a place in the oral history of Skyrim's campfire tales. Way back in 2012, a player's Skyrim experience took a rather chilling turn when Lydia, the steadfast house carol of Whiterun, returned from the other side. And yes, I do mean the other side. Not in the heroic, dragon-slaying way you might expect, but in a deeply unsettling and inexplicable manner that turned the humble breeze home into a scene straight out of a ghost story. The tale began after Lydia met her end in a dragon battle far from Whiterun, her body left behind as the player carried on with their adventures. Weeks passed, and the incident was nearly forgotten. But then the player decided to purchase Breezehome, the cosy player home in Whiterun, and began furnishing it to their liking. Upon stepping inside for the first time, they were greeted by a sight that froze them in their tracks. Lydia's corpse lying sprawled on the floor of the alchemy room. Stripped of her armour and wearing only undergarments, she looked like something from a crime scene. What made this moment so spine-tingling wasn't simply the spooky reappearance, it was the impossibility of it. Lydia had met her end miles from Whiterun, long before the house was even purchased or decorated. Yet, there she was, as if Skyrim's world had warped itself to deliver her back to the player in the most unsettling way possible. The strange intimacy of her placement within the alchemy room of the player's own home only added to their uneasy feeling, making them wonder if the game itself was toying with them. Theories abounded as to how this could have happened. Some speculated that Lydia's role as the Thane House Carol caused the game to relocate her, even post-mortem, to her assigned home in Breezehome. It's possible that the script simply didn't account for her being deceased, treating her as active in the game's memory and dutifully depositing her body. And Without her armour, looted or lost when she died, she reappeared in a state that felt strangely vulnerable, amplifying the creep factor. Others saw it as another of Skyrim's infamous quirks, where its engine seems to have a flair for the spooky glitch genre. The game's systems often produce glitches so specific, so perfectly bizarre, they almost feel intentional, like an inside joke from the universe of Tamriel itself. As one player joked, "Forget a horse's head in your bed, Skyrim gives you a house carol in your alchemy room." What really cements this story in the genre of Skyrim's urban legends is how deeply it resonated with players and how it inspired the sharing of their own variations of the tale. Stories of Lydia's post-mortem adventures, of her appearing in strange places, filled the replies to the original post, crashing weddings, haunting player homes, or simply vanishing and reappearing unpredictably. Each story added another bit of flavour to the overall urban legend, which is why I love digging up these stories. There's nothing better than weird, creepy tales that you wish you could see for yourself. When Skyrim was released in 2011, sharp-eyed players quickly began sharing discoveries, and one of the earliest was a small gold ring at the bottom of the well in Whiterun. On the surface, it might seem like a minor detail. After all, Skyrim is brimming with hidden trinkets. However, this particular find sparked intense speculation, with theories ranging from hidden quest triggers to a nod to the Lord of the Rings. Fundamentally, the placement of the ring felt deliberate. Its unobtainable location, visible but just out of reach, prompted players to try everything from telekinesis spells to creative uses of console commands in an effort to retrieve it. Yet, no hidden quest or dialogue related to the ring was ever uncovered. This only deepened the mystery, leading some to wonder if the ring was an Easter egg referencing the One Ring from Lord of the Rings, particularly given its position in a well, evoking imagery of rings lost in water. Others, as ever, proposed a more mundane explanation. A developer might have placed it there as a subtle detail to enrich the world building, or as a playful nod to the ring in the well trope seen in folklore and fiction. Yet, the absence of any clear confirmation from Bethesda allowed the legend to flourish in Skyrim's community for years. What makes this tale particularly interesting is how even today, more than a decade later, some players remain completely unaware of the ring's existence. Hopefully one of those players is you, watching this video right now. Yet another Skyrim player's unusual experience left readers curious. Way back in 2012, they shared their story of an odd encounter that turned what seemed to be a fairly normal, quiet morning in the village of Riverwood into a strange and puzzling experience. And I should just add, what is it with the village of Riverwood? A lot seems to happen there. Anyway, after spending a routine evening exploring Riverwood, the player rested at the inn. When they stepped outside at dawn, they noticed an unusual figure nearby. It was a bald, pale humanoid that stood motionless except for erratic, jerky convulsions. The figure didn't interact or acknowledge the player. It just stared down the road toward the Riverwood trader. Before they could investigate further, the figure vanished completely, leaving no trace. The player described the figure as resembling a Falmer, but with more defined muscular features. Its odd movements and sudden disappearance made the encounter feel distinctly out of place. Naturally, this sparked curiosity and speculation when posted online. Some players suggested it might be a Falmer texture glitch where the game incorrectly rendered assets onto an NPC model. Others thought it could be an unassigned NPC, a bug that spawns characters with no clear role or textures, often resulting in strange appearances or behaviours. Riverwood itself is no stranger to glitches, as we've seen from the previous tales. The player recalled seeing other oddities in the village, like NPCs performing animations in strange locations or suddenly teleporting around. These quirks might suggest that the apparition was simply another case of Skyrim's unpredictable engine at work. For fun, some who replied compared the event to the infamous Herobrine myth from Minecraft, imagining the apparition as a kind of Skyrim equivalent. A few even made tongue-in-cheek references to the JVK mod from Morrowind, a fan-made edition known for its terrifying and cryptic elements, which I should add I'll be covering in the Urban Legends of Morrowind video. While unlikely, these comparisons added a sprinkling of creepypasta-like intrigue to the whole affair. The timing and setting also added to the uneasiness of it all. Riverwood, usually calm and idyllic, made the appearance of the figure an especially jarring juxtaposition. That it happened at dawn, a liminal time often associated with strange transitions in folklore, only added further flavour to the story. The erratic convulsions of the figure, paired with its abrupt disappearance, can create a real sense of the uncanny when you try to imagine or picture the situation yourself. So whether it was a misplaced texture, an accidental NPC spawn, or just Skyrim being Skyrim, the Riverwood apparition remains, to me, an odd and memorable moment in the game's long online oral history of strange occurrences. In 2012, yet another Skyrim player recounted a bizarre encounter involving none other than Louis Latruche, the recurring NPC known for his dealings with stolen horses. The event started as they all do, innocently enough, a routine journey from Whiterun to the stables to retrieve their horse and begin a quest to find Latruche at the Bee and Barb in Rifton. But things took a surreal turn when they arrived at the stables. There, standing beside the player's horse, was not one Louis Latruche, but two. The duplicates stood side by side, perfectly identical in every way. When one spoke, the other's mouth mimicked the exact same movements, as if tethered to the same dialogue tree. Understandably confused, the player backed away, hoping the strange apparition would resolve itself. Curiosity got the better of them, and the next in-game day they returned to the stables. To their amazement, the Latruche doppelgangers were still there, frozen in their uncanny mimicry. Desperate to bring things back to normal, the player decided to attack one of the clones, but the game refused to let them kill either of the Latruches. Every strike merely staggered them, leaving the two unharmed. Then, in an unexpected twist, the player managed to trigger a conversation between the two Latruches. As they exchanged words, both mouths moved in perfect synchronization, mirroring each other with strange precision. The effect was so unnerving that the player quickly disengaged, retreating from the scene entirely. For those wondering, the player confirmed that they were on an Xbox console, ruling out the possibility of mods being responsible for the glitch. As far as they know, at least at the time of the posts, the twin Latruches remain at the Whiterun stables, trapped in their endless mimicry. This event is one of many strange glitches tied to Louis Latruche, who is already notorious in the community for odd bugs, most famously in a similar vein to the one we've discussed here, the Latruche multiplication glitch, where copies of him begin appearing at random locations across Skyrim. But this particular encounter happening at the same time in the same place definitely made it stand out. There are lots of smaller tales that have popped up over the years. In a particular thread posted in 2017, players shared their strange experiences. This Reddit thread became similar to this video, something of a virtual campfire for Skyrim players, a place where their strange, unexplained encounters were shared like ghost stories. Let's go through a few of their accounts shared in this particular thread. First off, we hear the story of a player exploring Blackreach who wiped out all the Falmer in the area and looted a chest. Turning around, they were horrified to find the corpses of all the slain Falmer standing upright, bloodied and stripped to their undergarments. The figures remained motionless but created a really creepy atmosphere. Reloading the save didn't recreate the event, leaving the incident unexplained. And next, after defeating the dragon Vinterith, one player noticed that instead of falling to the ground, the dragon glitched and hovered in the air, refusing to fully succumb. After fast travelling away, the player found Vinterith's corpse randomly spawning behind them, sometimes twitching or crashing to the ground. This unkillable dragon continued to stalk them throughout their game, appearing at unexpected moments and frequently crashing their save file. In another strange tale in the skies above Morthal, one player reported seeing a massive wooden door floating high above the horizon. The door lingered for about 10 seconds before fading away. Attempts to reach or interact with it failed, leaving the player questioning whether it was a glitch or some strange in-game mystery yet to be solved. And finally, for this thread, a player in the Volkahar dungeons killed a giant spider only to later turn a corner and see it standing upright, legs outstretched. The spider had inexplicably reanimated. I don't know about you, but the idea of zombie spiders would be enough to make me turn off the game. And now, for our next bigger story, we have a tale with actual evidence. This happened way back in 2012. The player was exploring Skyrim when something unusual happened. They fell through the game world into a bizarre, glitchy environment. Textures were incomplete, lighting flickered unpredictably, and the geometry of the world felt unnervingly wrong, like something from a fever dream. Rather than reloading, curiosity took over. They decided to explore this strange, liminal space. The air seemed heavy with an unnatural silence broken only by the distant echo of faint footsteps, though they couldn't tell if it was their own. The further they ventured, the stranger things became. As they turned a corner in this incomplete world, they were met with the sight of a draugr, one of Skyrim's infamous undead warriors. But something about this draugr felt off. Unlike those in the standard game world, this one stood still, unnervingly focused, as if guarding a secret it had no intention of sharing. The player engaged it in combat, and while the draugr fell quickly, a strange disquiet lingered. Its presence felt deliberate, as though this inexplicable space existed solely for encounters like this. The player pressed on, navigating half-formed corridors and shadowy halls, each turn feeling like it led closer to a terrible truth. A sense of wrongness persisted, as though they were intruding in a space never meant to be seen by sane eyes. Finally, after what felt like hours of wandering, they stumbled upon a door. But as they reached for it, the screen flickered, and suddenly they were back in Skyrim's overworld, as if the game had realised they were somewhere they weren't supposed to be, and expelled them from the mysterious dimension. It wasn't until much later that they pieced together the truth with help from other players. The glitch had unexpectedly transported them into Geirmund's Hall, a dungeon tied to the Forbidden Legends questline. The draugr they fought was one of the enemies guarding the hall, and their presence in this incomplete space was likely the result of an unintended map loading error. This realisation obviously doesn't take away from the bizarre nature of their experience. After all, the pictures are completely crazy. But it was never fully explained how they reached this area or why it looked so completely strange. Our next tale takes place in the rolling plains west of Whiterun, which are a familiar sight to any Skyrim player. By day, the golden grasses sway under the gaze of the throat of the world. By night, the stars glimmer. But one quiet evening in 2011, the peace of the Whiterun roads was disrupted by an event that remains an enigma to this day: the tale of the flying horse. A player new to adventuring in Skyrim, it was 2011 after all, shared their experience on the forums shortly after the game's release. I set out travelling west from Whiterun on the roads. It was night time. Just as I passed the stables, I came across a Legion soldier walking along the road. A little ways off, I spotted a horseman sitting still on horseback in the distance. The scene was ordinary enough, just another NPC idling on the roads. But then the horse and its rider took flight. According to the player, the horse suddenly flew up into the air, with the guy still sitting on its back, and streaked backwards like lightning, crossing the road and landing on a hillside. As I approached, the horse shot off again straight into the sky like a bullet before landing near where I first saw it. By the time I got close enough to investigate, the rider had vanished. It was a bizarre moment, to say the least. The player's attempts to chase down the rider proved fruitless, leaving them questioning whether they'd witnessed a glitch, an intentional design choice, or something far more mysterious. The story struck a chord with other Skyrim players, sparking discussions across the forum. Here are some of the related accounts and theories. One player recalled a horse shooting up behind them, bouncing twice before succumbing to the fall. While this was a pretty bad day for the horse, the event bore some resemblance to the original poster's tale, minus the rider's disappearance. Another commenter mentioned the Headless Horseman, an ethereal figure known to wander Skyrim at night. Could the original poster's encounter have been a twisted version of this spectral rider? Or was it another Easter egg buried within the game? Most dismissed the flying horse as a harmless physics glitch, the result of Skyrim's notoriously unpredictable engine. But still others speculated about the potential for hidden mechanics or quests, perhaps tied to the strange rider. What made the original account particularly interesting to me was the original poster's description of the horse's movement. The way it flew, very fast and upright, very matter of fact. It reminded me of the way that guy in the old 90s movie Warlock flew around. The unnerving precision of the horse's movements gave the player's account of the encounter a deliberate quality very different to the chaotic nature of typical glitches. So the next time you find yourself wandering the Whiterun plains, keep an eye on the horizon. You might just see a horse streaking across the sky, carrying its enigmatic rider to destinations unknown. Since way back in 2011, players have shared via various forums the discovery of a skeletal hand reaching from the water to offer a sword, tucked away in an unmarked location near Bleakwind Basin. This hidden detail caused excitement and speculation over the years, and even today some players are surprised to stumble across it or hear about it for the first time. The unmarked location can be found by fast travelling to Whiterun and heading northwest towards Bleakwind Basin. As you approach, of course, it's best to avoid the nearby giants by veering northeast. There, past the water near the camp and further up the hill, you'll find a small river. It's in this tranquil spot that the skeletal hand reaches up from the water, offering a weapon to the adventurer bold enough to claim it. The connection to the Arthurian Lady of the Lake is pretty clear. A sword rising from the water reminiscent of Excalibur bestowed upon King Arthur in the ancient myths. The type of sword offered by the game varies depending on the player's level, ranging from simple steel to the powerful dragonbone. It's a pretty cool detail, one that's been peppered across the online oral history of Skyrim right from the very beginning. Coming back to more recent times, in October of 2024, a peculiar and unexplained phenomenon was reported by a player on the X-Paranormal board of a particular website that I won't mention here for reasons. Anyway, the player reported that, across multiple playthroughs, with and without mods, a dismembered skeleton's hand would always appear at the location of their fast travel destination. This recurring event wasn't tied to any specific area, as the hand seemingly followed the player throughout the game world. The player noted that this occurred regardless of the character, settings, or game state, and it persisted across fresh saves. Despite numerous attempts to troubleshoot or find similar reports from other players, they found no evidence of anyone else experiencing the issue. Whether this anomaly was due to an obscure bug, a rare engine quirk, or something else entirely remains unknown, but it certainly stands out as one of Skyrim's stranger reported quirks. Another strange phenomenon was reported by a player in 2011 who was playing on PlayStation 3. This time an auditory anomaly. The player described encountering an unsettling, repetitive breathing sound during a quest in Rifton. This occurred after receiving the lexicon artifact from an Argonian NPC and entering a warehouse to eliminate a skooma dealer. According to the report, the sound resembled high-pitched panting described as unnatural and akin to mole rat noises from Fallout. The sound initially seemed tied to nearby enemies as it subsided once all hostiles in the area were defeated. However, its reappearance in a remote wilderness location far from any discernible threats deepened the mystery. Though the noise eventually stopped, the player noted its persistence during their travels and expressed concern about its inexplicable origin. They speculated that it might have been an audio glitch or misplacement of sound files within the game. Other forum users provided mixed responses. While some dismissed it as a routine bug and suggested resetting the game if it reoccurs, others found the description creepy and evocative of Skyrim-themed creepypastas. Ultimately, the player completed the lexicon-related quest without further disturbances and concluded that the artifact was unrelated to the phenomenon. Despite resolving their issue, they remained curious about the incident's cause, which remained without explanation. Given Skyrim's massive history of glitches, the breathing noise could plausibly stem from audio data misalignment, such as creature sound effects looping incorrectly, or playing at unintended volumes. However, its association with enemy proximity followed by its random recurrence raises questions. No similar cases were identified on the forum, leaving this report as an isolated incident. As you'll know, one of my favourite kinds to stumble across. So whether it was a one-time bug, an unintentional result of a sound asset reuse, or something more enigmatic remains unclear. On January 1st, 2018, while exploring Skyrim VR near Mara's Eye Pond, a player encountered something that went far beyond a typical glitch. In fact, it felt like the game had momentarily torn open reality itself. It began when the player crested a rocky hill to view the pond. Suddenly the game locked in place. Movement ceased, but his VR headset allowed him to turn and examine his surroundings. What greeted him was an impossible sight. The world was split into cascading circles, each one a distorted reflection of the central scene. These concentric patterns stretched infinitely in every direction, their edges curving like the horizon of a distant planet. And then the player turned around. Behind him, the scene mirrored itself but upside down, as if viewed through a convex lens. The inversion was flawless yet jarring, defying every rule of how a VR space should behave. It felt like the boundaries of Skyrim's reality had buckled, spilling into dimensions the game was never meant to touch. The sensation was otherworldly, like standing inside Christopher Nolan's Tesseract from Interstellar, only spherical. For a brief moment, the player felt both inside and outside the game, trapped in a frozen fragment of time that spiraled into infinity. The glitch ended as abruptly as it began, leaving the player to question what had happened. Was it a rare rendering error? A flaw in the VR's attempt to assemble the environment? Or something deeper? An accidental glimpse into the extra-dimensional mathematics behind the simulation of both the game and our reality itself. Despite attempts to replicate the event, it never occurred again. However, in the years since, a few others have reported similar phenomena, their descriptions aligning with the original player's report. If we were to be whimsical, we could imagine that rather than being simply a glitch, the player experienced a fleeting moment when the virtual and the cosmic collided in a way that goes beyond our normal comprehension. And being whimsical, after all, is exactly what makes storytelling like this fun. Coming back to 2024, a player shared a spine-chilling experience that defied explanation, where creepy, glitchy gameplay transcended itself into the unsettling atmosphere of a horror game. It began as it always does, just another bit of routine exploration, this time near Fellowstone Cave. But while navigating the terrain, they suddenly fell through the ground, plummeting into a seemingly endless void. After what felt like an eternity, they landed back in Skyrim. Or what appeared to be Skyrim. Something was unmistakably off. The clear, sunny skies they'd been enjoying were now replaced by an oppressive, heavy mist that blanketed everything around Fellowstone Cave. The mist was so thick that visibility was almost non-existent, making the familiar landscape feel alien and otherworldly. The first sign that something was seriously wrong came from the disembodied voices the player could hear around them. NPC phrases like, "What's that?" and "Who's there?" echoed all around, but there wasn't a soul in sight. Despite wandering through multiple towns and villages, the player found no signs of life. No NPCs, no animals, not even an enemy lurking in the shadows. The world was completely deserted. Things took an even stranger turn when they attempted to save their progress. The save option was red and inaccessible, as if the game itself was preventing them from leaving this ghostly version of Skyrim. The surreal emptiness combined with the disembodied voices created an atmosphere reminiscent of Silent Hill, amplifying the dread with every step. Despite retracing their steps and experimenting to replicate the glitch, the player was unable to recreate their experience. It remains a one-off event, unrecorded and unexplainable. So what exactly happened near Fellowstone Cave? Was it a rare glitch that warped the player into a corrupted instance of the game? Or was it something more sinister? Players have long speculated about Skyrim's quirks. Its glitches sometimes feel like windows into an uncanny parallel world that's just ever so slightly off-kilter. For this adventurer, the eerie stillness and impenetrable mist were more than enough to leave a lasting impression. Whatever the so far undiscovered explanation actually is, this player's shared experience certainly caught my attention, and it's one I am definitely hoping other players have experienced and could share in the comments if so. Another Skyrim player in November of 2024 encountered a bizarre and downright grisly glitch in their home at Windstad Manor. The floor was bleeding. The discovery, posted by a Reddit user, quickly captured the community's attention, garnering over 12,000 upvotes and sparking a flurry of speculation. The glitch presented itself as blood inexplicably spurting from the ground inside the house. While some players chalked it up to Skyrim's famously unpredictable bugs, others theorised a more morbid explanation. The most popular theory? Somewhere beneath the floorboards, an NPC had somehow phased through the game's geometry and met an untimely end, resulting in a gruesome spectacle as the body perpetually interacted with the environment. This isn't the first time such an occurrence has been reported. In Skyrim, NPCs occasionally spawn or clip into unexpected locations. If they find themselves trapped in solid structures, such as the foundation of a home, the game's physics system might register constant damage, causing blood effects to endlessly spray. While amusing to some, the glitch gave the house an unsettling atmosphere, especially when combined with Skyrim's ambient sounds. Unfortunately for console players, resolving such glitches can be tricky. Without the use of mods or console commands, the bleeding floor could persist indefinitely. PC players, however, have the luxury of using commands like disable to remove misplaced NPCs or objects. The Skyrim subreddit erupted with responses ranging from morbid humour to practical advice. Well, it's official, you've built your home over a burial ground. Sounds like you've got a free horror feature. It's a Skyrim exclusive water fountain, but blood. On console? Welp. I guess you're living with that blood forever. At least it's atmospheric. Others noted that NPC corpses in player homes might not despawn, making the glitch even harder to fix. The bleeding floor is, as is obvious from all the stories shared so far, one of countless quirky glitches that have made Skyrim a veritable hotspot for oddities since its release in 2011. For the unlucky player stuck with this particularly gruesome glitch, it might be time to embrace Windstad Manor's new haunted aesthetic. Among the many stories of strange encounters in Skyrim we've shared so far in this video, a particularly tantalising and elusive tale comes from a Reddit post shared in 2013 by a player who was playing on the PS3 version of the game. In a throwaway comment, this player described a phenomenon known as black troll stalkers, a unique type of creature they claimed was present in their version of Skyrim. However, beyond this single account, no other mentions or evidence of these creatures seem to exist anywhere online, and I find this completely gets my investigative mental processes running at full speed. The description is cryptic with little detail about what made these trolls distinct beyond their colouring and behaviour. Were they a product of a rare bug? An overlooked texture or model variation, or perhaps a shadowy remnant of cut content that never made it to the final game? The sheer lack of information surrounding the black troll stalkers makes this story even more tantalising to me. I want to know more, but there's nothing more to find anywhere. If you've been playing Skyrim and recall reading about anything like this, or have encountered it yourself on PS3 or any other platform, I'd love to hear about it. Could this be a forgotten mystery of the game? Or just a one-off glitch, forever lost to time? Or is it simply a, no pun intended, troll comment left to send players down the garden path? Let me know if you've encountered or read about these enigmatic black troll stalkers, or have theories about what might have caused them. As we wrap up our Campfire Urban Legends storytelling session, we're left with an impression of a game that is as much about the stories players bring to it as those it delivers in its own official narrative. Skyrim's world continues to provide players with bizarre experiences that feel equal parts glitch, myth, and legend. These accounts are evocative of, and honestly, a monument to the unpredictable magic that has kept Skyrim alive in our imaginations for so long. While some of these stories may have logical explanations hidden in the game's code, others remain mysteries impossible to fully resolve. Each of these stories taken together weave a tapestry of shared experiences, a digital folklore and oral history unique to Skyrim. The whimsy allows us to suspend our disbelief for a while, to ponder, to speculate, and to take part in our own and other players' unique legends. So, as you wander the cold wilds of Skyrim, keep one eye open for the strange and unexplainable. You never know when you might stumble upon your own story that's begging to be shared, and ultimately woven into a more than decade-long tapestry of digital oral history.